Just before we formally start, this is a meeting under the Linux Foundation antitrust policy. The full antitrust policy can be found on the Linux Foundation website. So briefly, Steve and I were just chatting that the last conversation was landscapes. The question is, how do we build a landscape to show tooling, and do we also include proprietary tooling in the landscape? I did have an update on the landscape. I just wanted to flag. I emailed Anna at To Do Group, and the tooling group was in CC, about reusing the To Do Group landscape, which is a fork of the CNCF landscape, which is something that Jan was trying to get working locally and couldn't. So To Do Group simplified it and was using a variant. We reached out. Anna connected us with Chris Anacek. Again, my replies to this were in CC to the tooling list. Basically, Anna and Chris would like what we do to be under the To Do Group OSPO landscape, though Jan and I both have a stance that what we're doing in creating a tooling landscape is really a separate optic. It's not focused on OSPOs, it's a much broader thing. And we have a feeling that it would be useful to have the tooling landscape as for want of a better word, a product in itself, something that is available for people to see the tooling based on our capabilities map. And then, of course, to potentially feed the information into aspects of things like the To Do Group OSPO landscape. So that's roughly where we're at there, and Jan is scheduled to have a call with Anna or Chris Anacek. He's trying to schedule that. Regardless of this, I just wanted to flag that Jan's idea, taking the CNCF landscape, looking at a simplified version based off the to-do landscape, provides an avenue to create a landscape that auto-generates and can be updated and would map out our capabilities map. It's not the only avenue, but it's an avenue. And one thing I wanted to check here was, what do you think about that? If we do have access to the landscape simplified code, do you think it's appropriate for us to maintain a landscape as a completed individual item that can be used in multiple domains, for instance, CTO offices, SCA teams, or do you think it should be incorporated in the To Do Group landscape, which would be unified with other topics? Just testing the water on that here.
I was hoping Jan would be on the call, to be honest. I don't have a great opinion either way.
Mm-hmm. The thing that Jan and I got to in brainstorming was to potentially have a landscape, which is the tooling capabilities map. And then that can be taken quickly, put on, for instance, the OpenChain website, or any project take it and put it on their website. But to have this information also feed into the To Do Group landscape so that they could take a simplified version of it, because remember, our tooling landscape is covering multiple domains, multiple interconnected sections. And they could take either the full details and import it, because of course it's the same data stream, or they could just take overarchingly and show a list of tools. At the moment, their approach is essentially overarching, a non-differentiated list of tools. So that sounds like it might be a viable approach, which feeds the data into other people's landscapes, but allows people to also just access the tooling capabilities map outside of looking at OSPO stuff. Checking there on any feedback.
Sounds good.
And then, I mean, it's up to Jan to, I think, have that talk with Anna and Chris and to get hold of the code. As in the chat, there were various feedbacks. It seems Carson has no objection. Aline feels that it's important to have reduced fragmentation. So that's a very good point, Aline, and this is where the topic of how to present the information comes into play. My hesitation of folding into only the to-do group map is that that's an OSPO map. And OSPOs are just one team that want to look at automation. We have many other teams that want to look at automation and wouldn't look for it in an OSPO domain. So by having a separate item, which also feeds into things like the to-do group map or anyone else's landscape map, other people have landscapes too, we could have the ability to show the tooling landscape alone, so that when people want to find that, they just find it, but also for the data to replicate pretty seamlessly into other people's landscapes with the common code base. Anyway, still up for topic. Jan will have a chat and see what's going on there. Right. So anyway, that's the landscape thing. And don't forget that, using that code and that approach isn't the only way we can do it. That's what Jan is looking at. We have other ways to do tooling landscapes, but it sounds like the thorny question for this group is, do we also include proprietary solutions in the landscape or not? Does anyone have any thoughts on that?
Again, I'm happy either way. I know that in the past we've generally tried to keep the things to the open source stuff, and one reason that might be a good idea as far as the tooling landscape goes is, I believe for the CNCF landscape, Tom's reported that there was a lot of effort required to get clearance from each vendor to include their logo on the landscape image. And that'll probably be easier for open source tools than it would be for commercial tools, particularly if they don't like how they're represented in terms of features.
That's true. That's true. The trademark thing can take a while. I noticed Carsten and Aline are both typing. You can also unmute yourselves and just talk, but you don't have to.
Okay, but I think supply chain goes beyond open source only, so I would, let's see, from an information point of view, say this is, I would not object to extending this to proprietary tools and products.
And Aline says basically the same. There's no issue to document proprietary solutions as long as there's a tag that they are proprietary, so people know what's going on there. Now, I'm just going to venture my opinion, but bear in mind, I have no authority in this group, okay? My opinion is that the biggest problem companies have is creating an optic of options. And I think if we limit it to the open source options only, we will create a situation where the proprietary tooling isn't mapped. And that will also give potentially a disadvantage to the user companies because they can't start to judge the proprietary tooling's capabilities versus open source tooling capabilities. And that could make it really hard to allocate resources. It costs money to use open source. But if the feature parity is there with the proprietary solution you were looking at, and you can easily visualize that, you might make a decision that the money it costs is less than the money it would take for the proprietary solution. Of course, the opposite is true. You might go in the other direction and choose the proprietary solution. But I don't see that as a problem for us. I don't think we need to be value-based. I think we need to be, how to put it, issue-based. That there's great open source solutions out there. We've created a great map for it. There are competitive proprietary solutions. Allowing people to choose between them, making it easier to choose between them, I think will make the market support the open source solutions more in the end anyway. But I do think it would be really good if CTO offices, if product offices can just do this comparison.
I also would have a hint here, being one of the founding members of this tooling group here, is that then the scope of this community would shift a little bit, because in the beginning, why did we sit together is we wanted to see, okay, what is there as open source, in order to avoid that we do redundant work and spill important resources. So this was for our common alignment. I totally understand the point, because obviously we have a fork of our tooling landscape here internally, where we also add the commercial tools, so it's anyway there, but it's another scope that we would have, and this would potentially threaten away some of those people that are not joining this group anymore since a while, because also we had this content shift, I would say. So this is then potentially the question, the people meeting here having the need, the requirement that we just discussed, and I'm totally with you, Shane, so that this is cool to have, right? From an OSPO point of view, or from a team point of view, that I have a good overview, a qualified, evaluated landscape where I say, okay, and now I can just use it as a toolbox and take this, and save a lot of time to come to a point where I can automate my whole process. That is great, right? But it was obviously not the main intention what we had in this tooling group in the beginning. And if we do so, then we should do in parallel this, more general discussion again on how do we then handle the original scope. Do we make another subgroup, or things like that, so that people are not puzzled?
This raises a natural next question. You mentioned people who are no longer really part of it and scope change. What do you think made some people disengage, and what could we do to bring them back?
So just my observation was that in the beginning it was really about open source developers, so all the participants that really developed open source projects, and it was very technical level. So I was there really the exotic guy, right? So as on the process level. So I was just a spectator in there, always trying to keep pace with them and trying to do this mapping to the process level. That's what I always saw as my role in there. And now I see rather this, also I think, naturally with the activity that we did last year with this capability things, that was rather meta level, right? And so all those hackers, more or less, they lost interest. I think that was mainly for that. But I appreciate that we have this community, right? Because we are all on the same page. But we somehow lost the original team there. And I don't know if they have alternative groups or communities where they gather. But we should be careful here, because in the beginning we also had companies that couldn't afford also commercial tooling. And that was also our intention to say, okay, let's have this open source collection for everyone in the supply chain, especially to say, okay, if there are any suppliers that's, this is so expensive, blah, blah, blah. No, it's all there. It's open source. You can just use it right away and be then also compliant to or conform to OpenChain. That was the intention to no excuses, right? So here, there's no excuse that you do not have the money. Here, it's all open source. You can download it. We try to also provide then the documentations, made those blueprints and things like that, so that we really have on one side the specification that works for everyone, then also the nice material from OpenChain, and then additionally also here a way to provide open source toolings, ideally directly to take away and easily to deploy and use it, not at big scale, but that, if teams need something, that they get something. And this was where we also stated in the beginning, okay, therefore we will limit ourselves only to open source.
Very, very good overview. And I just noticed there was a comment from someone who's gone. 199.
Yeah, no, sorry, that was me. This is Francis.
Hi,
I was
Francis.
logged in incorrectly. I don't come so often because of this point. There was just so much back and forth on the timing and time zones, and
Yeah.
I just was so unsure. And I've got 10 different things in my copies of the meeting in my calendar, and so at least that's why I was gone for a while. And maybe that was an issue for some others as well.
It's a really good
have a certain time and stick to it no matter what. Yeah.
That's a really good point. We had a lot of uncertainty, I think, starting last year, where we rescheduled a lot and things. We had some transition with leadership.
Right, there was some conflict with some other meeting where,
Right.
like most of us were in, and
Right.
it took a while to
And
think that.
we've had some chaos in other parts around OpenChain with this. The main meeting shifted because we were consistently overlapping with SPDX. So we shifted our main meeting 1 hour before, but a whole bunch of people still have the legacy invite in their calendar, despite notes. And yeah. But now we seem to be on a regular track. This meeting, I think, has been happening the same time every month for a while now, which is good. Here's something I just wanted to ask a question about. I was concerned starting last year that we weren't getting many presentations about where tooling was. And I did put out multiple calls asking people about doing, for example, tooling webinars to show off their project and so on and so forth. But I got practically zero responses. So I'm wondering how we can re-enthuse people to do the more technical stuff. But I just wanted to note that invitations to do deep dive webinars and so on have been ignored.
Yeah, so perhaps so this shouldn't be an apology, but we're just on the border. It is, I think from same for Fossology, Software 360 board, we kind of overwhelmed with our success of the adoption, so that we have a lot of people now using the stuff, so that all our developers, the community, we're completely, overwhelmed. And we had this community meeting in March, I think. And so we just made it, right? Because we said, okay, we have this, right? Just do it. And I think that would be good, because I don't think that anyone is just reluctant. It's just a matter of time. And I think if we just start this activity and say, let's invite for a next meeting here and there and just do it, I think then the people will come in, because there is a big interest in growing and maintaining the community. It's just a question of time. And at the moment, the prioritization is, well, there are important topics and urgent topics, as you know, and then the most urgent is to keep that whole thing running at the moment. And if we can say, okay, let's use this date and then sit together and talk about it, show all of this, then I think we can also raise the urgency and say, oh, yeah, I want to be there. I want to present it. I think that is currently missing. Yeah. And also that here with chairing this meeting, for example, it also has a big effect, right? So that we have, I think when Oliver chaired this very regularly, so everyone was leaning back and saying, Oliver's doing it. So perhaps also we should be more, take more discipline and having a clear idea. Okay, perhaps we make a monthly turn. Let's say, okay, next month I will share, next month this one will share, etc., that we have at least the sustainability also from the agenda and contents and so on.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And do we have that agenda and content like for the next 6 weeks or 8 weeks somewhere in a central place online, or is it always in these emails? I've got so many emails from OSS tooling. Is there a central place where we can say, the next
I
August
would love
meeting will
this.
be on this and this date. Here's how you get in, and the topic is X. Because
Yeah.
if there were such a sort of a calendar of what we're going to address, I could imagine that I don't want to speak for Arun, but I could imagine that we might be willing to present on a topic related to Software 360 at a next one, but I just sort of am missing the overview. You know, I should have the overview. If I would read all my mails, I would have it, but it would be so much more convenient just to know, here's the overview of what's all coming, and that if we had such, then we could use that, you know, to, you know, market.
You're reading my mind, Francis. It's exactly the same.
Well, I do have a suggestion for this. There is the GitHub repo sharing creates value. Now, one of the things we've had, a bottleneck, and it's still a bottleneck on this call. This call is owned by Oliver, and unless he has set someone up, none of us can screen share, none of us can record. And, you know, this is also, I think, where the sharing creates value repo, we need to check who's got moderator permissions and so on. We might need to extend the amount of people with moderator positions, and perhaps we can use the sharing creates value repo as the actual single source of truth of what's going on with this tooling group. Yeah.
Great idea. I would welcome that, yeah.
I also have a proposal. We've done a lot of meta stuff last year with the capability map, but the capability map is done. And now what remains is for some parties in this group to implement the capability map with tools. But that's one avenue. Maybe we can take a second avenue, perhaps a majority avenue going forward, of actually getting back to talking about the tools, doing what, you know, Francis and Marcel just said. Have every month say that out of this call, 50 minutes is about tooling, 10 minutes is an update on the landscape. And maybe we can push it back into talking tooling, talking what's going on in the market, gathering that knowledge, and then we put what we've got into the repo, and then that's included into the landscape and so on over time. What do you think? Or is that a bridge too far?
I think it's a good idea, but because we had this in the beginning, so that we need to be careful that this will not end up in having pitches from vendors there. So even if some would appreciate that, but that we have a clear structure where we say, okay, first part is without vendors, second part is with vendors or something like that, so that everyone is clear, okay, I will move out the next second part, or I will explicitly moving the second part to have this, so that we can cover both parts. So that I would appreciate, because we were very strict in the past only on open source, so that, as I just said, that we make some progress and can exchange with each other. But as you said, now there's this second group of interested people that might not only be interested in this open source things, but in the total picture. And I think if we have this a clear structure, a clear transparent structure, I think then that would work. Otherwise, I think also that we would lose people, or people not coming, or being bored, or not so happy with vendor pitches in there.
Absolutely. In fact, my proposal, Steve has a note, which he's going to have to drop off, so I'll read his note first. Regular meetings before did include a news section, often raised contributions about what's going on with tools, events, and call for papers. That's a good point, Steve. Maybe we introduce a structured news, discussion, activity, and larger updates, and then perhaps update on capability map as appropriate. Great feedback. My proposal, Marcel, is that we still don't have implementation on the open source side. So why don't we stick with the open source side? We want open source tools talking about themselves on a technical level, and we want the open source tools in the capability map. And then, for example, when the capability map is done with the open source tools, we can tell the vendors, have at it, open pull requests to expand the capability map. And they use their own resources to do that. And then we can, have a look at what they said and sanity check and see if we agree or not.
That's a good idea. And ideally, I think we had this discussion several times already. We said, okay, we we want to know from the vendors what they do to support open source, like if they have an open source part of it, or are they open core or things like that. So there was, so I think no one is in the line that was on the extreme other side at the moment. So perhaps Max, I don't know, but I think it's
Unmuted.
harmless to start with the open source only. I think then we have the biggest progress, and then we might have come back to this discussion. How do we handle vendors? And this is the second step, so I would totally appreciate that.
And I think we can all agree the last thing we want would be just vendor sales pitches. None of us need that. So, if and when we're ready to, for instance, invite them to explain where they might be in the tooling landscape, I suggest we confine them, at least initially, to pull requests, as apart from saying, hey, join our call and do a presentation on your tool. Let's keep that domain for open source projects that need exposure, don't have marketing teams. But at some point, after we do all the open source, we sit down and say, do we allow the vendors to open pull requests to be in the map too? Which sounds like a reasonable way forward, that we go back to having news, we go back to having the majority more engineering focused. What's this tool doing now? Deep dive. Then at the end, we have a smaller update just where the capability map is, with the smaller group working on that. And we try to improve the knowledge of what the tools currently do and how they're mapped. I see that Lennart and also Francis are typing. So,
hello, can you hear me?
Yes, hello. Hi, Lennart.
Lennart is here. Oh, sorry.
You are.
I'm, good morning to all. I'm happy to hear something. Sometimes I just tried this. I have two calendar entries at 9 o'clock our time and at 10 o'clock, which is now at the time. And now I find some people here in there where I'm happy to hear it. One question, which is the valid calendar entry? This I have one at 9 o'clock, one at 10 o'clock, and one at 5 o'clock p.m. for weekly every 2 weeks of this group.
It should be varying. One meeting today, which is
which is now.
Which is now. And then I think the other meeting in 2 weeks happens.
It's in the afternoon that we have also the US part. So from the SPDX side, especially because they couldn't join that early. Mm-hmm. So there was the decision to say, okay, first Wednesday, more European Asian time frame, and then and the third Wednesday meeting then rather in the afternoon, so that we can also have
from other time zone colleagues inside.
Yeah, from especially as we had how is his name from the SPX tooling?
Gary.
Gary O'Neill, right? Gary, because he just couldn't make it that early, and he was more or less frequent participant. So in the beginning, we had every Wednesday in the morning and the afternoon, and that was too much. So then we said, let's split it. But we could also come back to, always Wednesdays in the morning and in the afternoon, mm-hmm. If there is the need. But I think now as the participant number went down, we tried to have it on this first and third Wednesday, and first in the morning, third Wednesday in the afternoon. But to be honest, last time I joined in on Wednesday afternoon, I was the only one. So there was
the 9 o'clock the entry is invalid, so I could delete it
yes.
from the calendar. Okay.
Now,
and what I do at the moment is I ignore everything in my calendar in Outlook and directly go to the global calendar on the website to be on the safe side.
Okay, that should be the best way. Yes, that's right.
And I also like this proposal from Francis and Shane, so that in future we will have in sharing creates value. We will talk to Oliver that we also put there the next meeting with agenda, and so that we have clear and transparency what we can expect. Because sometimes you also, well, if you can join and say, I don't care, or, oh, this is so important to me that I want to send a representative. So it's always good to have then an idea what will be discussed about. Right?
Absolutely.
So I would also really appreciate that.
And I'm going to do my whiny admin thing. There's 2 points. One is that I really, I'm so tired of us having legacy invites stuck in people's calendars. And it happens all the time. Every time a meeting is moved, a whole bunch of people, their calendar just doesn't update. I don't want to use calendar invites, but every time we've tried to move away from them, I get a ton of emails from people saying, I missed the call, please send invites in future. So I'm not sure what to do there. The second point, and this is pedantic, but it is kind of important. The difficulties with recording these meetings and having minutes is actually quite an issue. You know, we're meant to, for projects, especially in things like US domains, we're meant to try to make sure things are always documented. So if there's any concerns about antitrust or similar or competitive issues, people can see what really happened. So you know, this is an ongoing concern of mine, that it's first of all very hard to get the calendar thing done. I really think everyone should just use the global calendar. But second of all, we really need to make sure each of these meetings is recorded and available for people. I don't know what we do. Maybe turn on auto recording. Maybe we try to get a whole bunch of people, if possible, made admins on this so we can all turn on screen sharing and so on. But we as an administrator, we need to do something to improve discoverability.
But Shane, are you sure that, I mean, there are some arguments in the other direction, right? I mean, how do you make sure that you're GDPR compliant and so on, right? You would have to theoretically ask everybody all the time, you know, hey, you're going to be recorded and so on.
Yep.
You know, we're pretty sensitive about that topic here in Europe, right?
Yep, no, absolutely. The recording thing would have to be permission-based, that it would just be like these meetings are recorded or these meetings are not recorded. You know, this section that are under Chatham House, the rest of this meeting is public. We'd have to make some determinations. Oh, Max just points out that if it is auto-recording, it'll tell you. Yeah. It's a tough one. I don't have a good answer about that.
Yeah, because we sometimes, you know, do want to have really open discussions among friends, right?
Of course.
And I don't know. I choose my words then carefully if I know I'm going to be recorded for eternity.
Absolutely.
You might choose to not point something out, right?
No, that's a very good point. And the only thing I can suggest is that we always try to we always revert to Chatham House when people want to have these more informal discussions, and that's perfectly valid too. It's just on the general day-to-day meeting thing, we're meant to have records, and sometimes when there's no auto record, the thing's public, everyone can dial in, but when there's no auto record, there's no record, and I worry about that. Not to say we should record Chatham House, of course not. And that's a perfectly valid, that's fine under antitrust and everything like that, that's fine. We just have to make it clear, oh, we're switching now from the general public meeting into a Chatham House discussion where we're not going to say company X said Y or person A said B. That might be too pedantic. I'm sorry to go into that. But
no, it's okay. But I see the difference, and also coming with Corona, so that when we started, we had really we take turns, and well, every participant then invited. So we had 1 month at Siemens, 1 month at Canon, 1 month in our space, 1 month even at the ESA, right, the European Space Agency. That was really cool.
Wow.
And yeah, and perhaps that could also be a thing that we potentially might use the coming events now in autumn, where we sit together and say, okay, how could we set this up again to be not only electronic or online, but coming back again to face-to-face, perhaps every now and then, also to have some room and coffee corners or whatever.
Absolutely. Marcel, oh, sorry, my apologies, Francis, go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, so I think that's a great idea. And I could well imagine that Siemens Healthineers in Germany would be willing and able to invite to such some date that we choose. Yeah, so I think that's a great idea.
I just wanted to flag, Marcel shared the global calendar and then said, but the global calendar shows today's meeting at 8. And said, that's because it's UTC.
Okay, and someone needs to explain to me UTC, because yesterday we also had this, yesterday in the export control meeting, it says, okay, UTC means in daylight saving time means this, and in standard time it means that. And I was completely puzzled what's meant now.
But I just
and in today's meeting it just said 8, but not UTC. Yeah.
I just want to point out to tiny continents like Europe, or small ones like North America, the rest of us don't use daylight savings because we're not insane. So we don't have this problem.
Yeah. And fortunately today the Outlook entry was the correct one, so I was really happy. Yeah.
It's a really good point about the time zones. It's very hard, and we've tried to use UTC, but a lot of people have daylight savings, and now Europe and America change daylight savings at different times, which is horrific.
In country, the SPB's tech and the SPB's legal details, they send out short notices just an hour or two before the event.
Yeah.
And I think that works pretty well because people are seeing and they can adjust, okay, in 2 hours, in 1 hour. So this whole confusion thing is out of that. Yeah.
I guess then
I find that is a good solution.
A takeaway for me then.
Reminder.
That's really good feedback, Carsten. A takeaway for me then might be that as we move into this new news engineering, and that's most of the meeting, and then capability map, this new structure, this new agenda, that we tell everyone, okay, just delete all the old invites in your inbox, and we have one new invite on an immutable time that doesn't change again, that goes out with the fresh calendar entry and update.
But I think that is just temporal again, because at one stage you have to renew those again. What I was thinking is whether it is a good idea to include basically timestamp in the invite title.
Yes. To
see what is recent and what is not recent. So
and send out an email.
Differentiate between old and new.
Yeah. Maybe then the timestamp in the email and the reminders are a to-do for me to try to improve how we do this.
Yeah, that would be great. Not only for the tooling group, but for all the OpenChain meetings. That would be really helpful.
Most of the OpenChain meetings in the subject, they get a reminder automatically, but also I send a reminder usually a day ahead, and in the subject line I try to include primary time zones, UTC, Pacific, Central European time, and so on. But that's only the meetings where I'm leading and I do the reminders.
I have a question back to the content. So
yes,
if somebody, you had mentioned before, Shane, that you tried to, encourage, calls for presentations and so on. And I've got 2 points. Where would somebody actually say, yes, I would be willing to hold a presentation? Because I sort of feel like the only way I know to do that is to say, reply all to the whole list and tell everybody in the world that I would maybe consider doing a presentation on something. I'm sort of would somehow prefer to, send that to some sort of a smaller group of moderators or something, but I don't know. That's sort of one aspect. So how does somebody offer to present? And the second one was maybe one could also have a call for what would people in our own community want to see. I would be for example, very interested in knowing what's the latest on open source approaches to trying to know what is in containers, for example. That's a pain point we would currently have, and I would be interested in hearing that. And if somebody, you know, in this group or the, you know, extended group would know that that there is an interest in that topic, then that might motivate somebody further to maybe present on that topic if they already have something. You know, they wouldn't do it on their own if they get a mail from Shane, does anybody have anything to present? But if they know, hey, there is a concrete interest in topic X, and I just happen to have a top offer on topic X, that might cause people to do that. But, you know, I don't want to tell the whole world, I'm looking for topic X. You know, how can one, you know, moderate that somehow?
Well, it's a really good point, and our weakness has been email back and forth and so on to the whole group. How about what we talked about earlier, moving the center of gravity to the sharing creates value repo? And we use that for doing calls. People can put in, you know, a pull request or a note that they might be willing to talk about something, and then one of the chairs of this group goes and talks about specifics. So in that way, we could have the repo asking people for covering something specific, and then people could express interest, coordinate with a moderator, and lock it down, or express interest but nothing happens, which is also a valid outcome.
Yeah, or we would have a topic backlog kind of, where everyone can vote on the issues or something like that.
Yeah.
And I think our discussion boils down that we miss Oliver here as a chair, because in the past it was easy. You just told Oliver, "Hey, next time I present this," and then he could just coordinate it. And perhaps that would be the first thing that we should solve. Say, okay, let's have ideally a rolling chair so that everyone is not overloaded with that. But say, okay, for the next quarter, I will take over, or then next time this one will take over, so that we have at least someone that we know, okay, for the next quarter, we have one single point of contact that we can ask everything, right? And he will take over and coordinate that and dispatch things. And that used to be Oliver all the time, so he had also all the load, right, on his shoulders. But I think as a community could do better here.
Yeah, makes sense.
Perhaps we could solicit in the next couple of weeks a couple of volunteers to co-chair, and then decide among themselves who takes lead over this period, who takes lead over that period, so that we end up with some redundancy, and you know, a group of people who think, okay, we're ready to reinvigorate this, get those engineering conversations done, and I'll lend as much support as possible to provide admin backup. Okay, it sounds like one to do. I noticed Max was typing something, so Max, you're just leaving space there for you to continue typing and or just unmute.
Nothing relevant. I just wanted to answer, Marcel. I think the Google Calendar shows your local dates in your local time zone, not in UTC. But I think that was also discussed previously. Nothing relevant.
Well, it is a little relevant. So the baseline of the global calendar should be UTC, and the only...
I know you can set the time zone that it is showing in the URL, for example. So you can pass the time zone that you want to show it in.
Absolutely. There's only one call that's horrific in terms of it changes all the time, and that's our first Tuesday global call, because despite using UTC, as soon as America changed time zone, we lost the entire American audience. So to get them back, that call had to be fixed down at Pacific time, which of course changes twice a year. But apart from that, the rest of our calls are all locked into UTC. Usually. But we don't have to do that. We can change this call to be locked to Central European time, which will vary between CET and Central European summertime. I don't care. It's up to the group. Every group decides. Okay. In that case, the thing then is to solicit a couple of volunteers to be the chairs in the next few meetings. So, do we have two people who'd be willing to step up and then coordinate among themselves which meetings they could chair in the next couple of months? Francis, I saw your note, make UTC more clear. I will. I'll update the website. Carson points out we could start to collect topics of interest. Yes, good point. And we can make Sharing Creates Value the center of gravity pretty much right away. I'll check if I've got admin access, in which case I'll start to update it so that people can start opening issues and pull requests to improve it as our actual center of gravity. So Francis, I'll update the website to make UTC clear, probably just in front of the calendar noting that all the times are UTC, or displayed in UTC by default. Carson, collecting topics. Yes, absolutely. Perhaps we'll do that via GitHub, maybe open a poll and get everyone to say what they want. Not to overstate it, but yeah, Gerald says UTC by default would be great. Yes, it would. All of my meetings suddenly changed the other day. 1 hour, I guess the US changed time zone, so all of the Linux Foundation meetings suddenly altered in my calendar. Okay, Carson, I'll look at opening a poll about topics. Gerald notes he doesn't have daylight savings, neither here in Japan or in Korea or in China. Okay, we've got everything we need, I think. We actually have a really interesting swing back to a more technical side here. We're leaving meta land. More structure. Silence on immediate volunteers to run the meetings. Don't worry, I'll hunt you down. And I'm going to go and work on the GitHub repo to make it our center of gravity. So unless there's any other topics, this is where we end with a very positive note that we're going to try to make this much easier to take part in, much more practical, while also keeping some of the meta stuff like the capabilities map implementing in the background.
Oh, I would love to volunteer already for September, but this is when I'm on holiday, at least for the first Wednesday meeting. And then the second one will be then the Linux Summit in Bilbao. So I don't know how we will handle this.
Yeah.
So, but I can at least volunteer for the 4th of October, so the first Wednesday meeting in October. And I also just checked, I also have admin rights to Sharing Creates Value. So in case someone gets stuck, it's at least I can do things there. I don't know how much it's limited, but I could create things in Sharing Creates Value if you need support there.
That's fantastic. For this month, the next meeting, the third Wednesday one, is 1 a.m. So I don't want to do that. But in September, I can do both of those meetings while everyone's on holiday, because I'll be in Japan during this meeting, 5 p.m., and I'll be in Bilbao during the next meeting, which is 5 p.m. in Europe, and that's fine too, or 6 p.m. in Europe. So I can take September if someone's willing to take the second week of August. And then we've got Marcel opening October, and we can work out the rest as we go. Okay, so I'll go hunt down someone to run third Wednesday. Okay, everyone, thank you so much. This has been hugely productive meeting, I think, in our reboot. And there's just a ton of technical stuff to look at. I mean, the interconnects between new tools, stuff that's coming out of Asia into things like ORT, I just don't know how they interconnect yet. But for instance, the Korean team behind Fossilite, we're talking about integration with ORT and Fossology. We just don't have enough details yet. So if we can create a space where we really get that snapshot, it's going to be awesome to see like what is Ort doing now? There's been a ton of development. Very cool.
Yep, sounds good. I think we're on the right track. Look forward to a restart. Yeah,
Yeah, and
back
Francis,
to the roots.
SW360 is something where I've noticed a lot of people talking about it recently.
Mhm.
So if we can get a real idea
Right.
of where
I
it's
think
at
we,
today.
I think we have a new feature of a package portlet that we can probably talk about soon. That Toshiba and Healthineers were working on, and I think it's close to being able to show that in its glory, and get further feedback on it and how that fits to all the dependency trackers and all the other stuff, connecting that to the build pipelines and so on.
That is perfect. That is perfect. Okay, everyone. We have a nice future coming up. Thank you for your time. Have a beautiful day. If you're going on vacation, good for you. I'll talk with you soon.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Yeah. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.